All right. Hello. Let's just start right in. I'm going to do a little response to Paul Vanderklay's interview with Becky at Breakwater. I'll post the link to it so you can watch the whole thing. I probably should at some point add it to the show details. All right. That's that. So let's just go into it. This is titled How the Birth of Her Child Broke and Rebuilt Her Faith.
I am in my late 20s. I'm married. I have a little boy, and he is the person with whom I spend the most of my time at the moment. Just in the last month, I've resigned / was encouraged to resign from church ministry. That was my dream for kind of where my life was going to go, was working in churches. It's what I've been doing for the entirety of my adult life. But after the birth of my son, I had a very transformational experience, which I guess I either wasn't able to translate into the work that I was doing, or the context I was in wasn't maybe that welcoming for the kinds of wrestling that came out of that experience, and how it's shaped me and how it's shaped how I want to be with others and walk alongside others. I grew up in Suffolk in East Anglia, the most easterly part of the UK. And I grew up in a family where my mum was a very passionate Christian, and my dad was willing to participate in going along to church and raising us as Christians, though he probably wouldn't have said he had a faith of his own. We went to a very family-oriented Anglican church. And I knew from a very young age that I felt this was real and true, and the most beautiful thing that I had kind of ever locked eyes on was the story of Jesus on the cross. So as a child, I decided that was kind of what I wanted to be all in on. And that formed the basis of my identity. And I then got very involved in, like, I guess in the US you would call like seeker sensitive. So I got very involved in like a seeker sensitive church in my late teens, which is like a church that kind of pivoted all of the things, services, everything that it did in like an attractional way to kind of connect with the culture around us. And I was really, really heavily involved in that. In my late teens, I decided I wanted to work in the local church. I went to university, did biblical studies and theology, discovered like a profound love and kind of, I was enamored with the Bible and its richness and how many different things it revealed and unfolded as you looked into it further, and wrestled with lots of doubts while I was at university, because I studied in a secular setting, so it was very much like very critical approach to the biblical text, Christian history, all of that. And that was very formative for me. And then subsequently, I went and began working in church ministry, and I've hopped around in roles in church ministry until 1 month ago.
Until 1 month ago. So she was in ministry very recently. 1 month ago, this being Breakwater. So Breakwater was what? A month ago itself. Welcome back, Caliban. I'm going to keep going with this for a little bit because it's going to take a little time to develop. I don't know what phlebas means by that, but okay. No, I'm not a doctor.
I thought you had to be a doctor to comment on like mental health stuff generally. Is that not true?
Comment on what?
Just to have I thought you had to just be a doctor to have opinions and be able to hold opinions on things and think about
Well, somebody hasn't told the internet. But yeah, no, it's just the thing I want to talk about is well, we'll see. We'll see. Let's just play with her story a little bit, or listen to her story some more, and then see where it goes. But yes, no, these aren't professional expert opinions. I won't claim that, but okay.
And now I'm here.
Wow. Wow. How old's your little boy?
So he is going to be 2 in July, and yeah, it was really his birth that was the most transformational experience in my life, and what happened afterwards. And yeah, so that's what's led me to where I am.
I'm a little curious about this transformation. Well, having any child is a transformational experience, especially for the mom, but usually often for the dad. So did something special happen with that?
Yes, special is probably not the word I would use for it, unfortunately. I couldn't cope with becoming a mum. And it was the most petrifying thing that ever happened to me. The realization of having a newborn, which, funnily enough, I'd thought a lot about what it would be like to have a child. I didn't think very much about what it would be like to have a baby. And I was, everyone always says, nothing can prepare you, but I felt there must have been something completely wrong with me in how ill prepared I felt and how unable to cope with the reality of having a baby I was. And I didn't know what to do with that. And so it was to the extent that I kind of didn't think that my little boy would grow up with a mum. And obviously, so prior to that, 2 weeks before I had my boy, I was preaching at a church weekend away. A month before that, I'd been speaking at a conference for kind of training people in doing church in a way that relates to unchurched people. And so I was so resonated with what Nemo said this morning about I can't articulate to you how invested, and not just invested, but how confident I was in my faith, how convinced I was that it was true, and that probably, if I'm honest now, how convinced I was that I had the answers. But after I had my son, I just felt, as I kind of cried out to God to help me through this situation, and not even, I would say to God, not even for me, but for the sake of this child that you've allowed to come into the world, don't let him have such a disappointing mother. And I just felt totally abandoned. I'd never experienced such a sense of isolation and aloneness, and that there really wasn't somebody listening. And I wasn't ready for that. My conception of faith wasn't ready for that. And I lost sight of God in my map of the world. I couldn't locate him. I didn't know where to locate him. And so that experience then sort of culminated in me really questioning and ultimately verging on the loss of my faith. And so interestingly, while I was swatting up for today, I listened to one of the podcasts you've released very recently, and you were talking about.
Okay, just a few things come to mind. I've watched this once through already, and then listened to half of it again before talking about this. My experience with mental health, of course, is more as a survivor, not as a medical professional. So my perspective is just my perspective. As I did have a little back and forth with Paul behind the scenes after this came out. And of course, the very first thought that came to mind whenever you talk about a woman a new mother, anybody who's read anything on the subject, the first thought that came to my mind was postpartum depression. And I listened through this the first time through, desperately waiting for the subject to be brought up. And we never got there. And it was an elephant in the room for me, especially when you're talking about she's suddenly experiencing a sense of isolation. It's very normal for new mothers in general, but for women who've had disruptions to their sense of self, they're experiencing severe anxiety, self-worth issues. She mentions, feeling in a sense bad for having for a child having a mother like herself or something like that. It's just, all of this just screamed at me like, this postpartum depression. And I wanted to know, at the very least, was it a subject? I mean, I can't imagine her walking into her doctor's office or into the pediatrician's office and expressing any of these feelings and someone not raising the issue. So since the question was never asked, we don't know if she ever explored that as a way of coping or at least framing some of the difficulties she was experiencing. But I don't know. What do you guys think? I got a lot of pushback privately.
This is like what I see as maybe the most harmful thing about the theology of people like Paul. And one of the big motivations or selling factors that they kind of use for their worldview is this idea of like meaning crisis, right? Which I think is actually a really low resolution label for a whole host of mental health issues that people have in modern societies. And I think that one of the things that Paul and many people in the corner have done is kind of try to provide people with an alternative explanatory framework for making sense of some of this stuff, but in terms of like religious symbols. And they've kind of also made people dependent on the source here by saying like by trying to convince people that they feel better when they don't, because they feel some guilt obligation to, because otherwise the faith isn't real, or the thing is, and there's all kinds of like weird structures around that I find sort of like bad and toxic and don't like. And I mean, it even comes down to like, one of the things is like Peugeot often talking about how people need to like kind of trust medical professionals and doctors less, and maybe we should like think about like exorcisms more and stuff like that. And so, you can find clips of him saying these sorts of things all over the place, and it's just incredibly dangerous and harmful in my opinion. Like, and it does get in the way of, I think, these people being able to offer accurate explanations of what is going on with people that they encounter, where they can help them. It becomes a stumbling block for them aiding these people. And I know they can explain it away and say, but actually I'm really saving them from hell or something. But I don't think that's right. I actually think you're more likely to give these people a bunch of trauma where they end up just leaving Christianity and never coming back if they ever come to realize just how messed up the way that they've been treated and these kinds of things have been handled is.
I don't think we quite got to in depth to the part of the story where she talks about the first round of experiences of doubt. She grew. It seems like she raised. She was raised in or had become a minister in a pretty fundamentalist kind of Christianity, and she experienced doubts in like her first or second year in college because she was
I'd love to place it. I want to bet that she went to Oak Hill College. I don't know that or London.
It's
London.
never mentioned to my knowledge.
Okay, I'm just. That's just a bet. If we can find out, I'd feel.
In the UK, it's a college in the UK.
Yeah. It's where Glenn Scrivener went. Actually.
Oh, really? Okay. So when she the dinosaurs come up a couple times in the conversation that was a source of doubt for her, of questioning her first little bit of wrestling with her faith happened around the dinosaurs, which it's fun. It's kind of spoken of amusingly, but that was the kind of the chink in the armor for her, but she was able to repress it and move on and develop a career, a ministry, and then bam, she has the baby, and it kind of rocks her world, and she's suddenly overwhelmed with not just religious doubt, but self-doubt and certainly what sounds something like depression. I don't know, not a doctor again, but at the very least, she expresses anxieties. What would you call it? Self-loathing? I mean,
yeah.
It does. You listen to the whole thing, folks. It's really worth listening to. She's a very brave woman to come up and do this. The only reason we're talking about Orando in this way is because it did happen in public. It's now on 2 channels. It's both on the Breakwater channel and on Paul's channel. I'm guessing because of how common postpartum depression is, and how common depression is, period. A lot of women may listen to this, and I don't know. I think it's worth discussing. And since it's here, it's in the open. We're going to talk about it like it's in the open. And God bless her for being willing to step forward and speak of her experiences and her journey. And it sounds like she's regrouping and coming back from the brink, so to speak, finding her way forward. I don't get the impression that she feels quite so much of this same immediate anxiety that can be very threatening. But this stuff kills people, folks. This is why it really needs to be taken seriously if this is what it is. I mean, and I don't think that I think even a diagnosis coming from where she did, from her theological position within a kind of fundamentalist evangelicalism, even a diagnosis, a medical diagnosis, if she were to have gotten one and embraced it, so to speak, that itself probably would have been a challenge for her faith that she would have to work through. So it's not a cure-all, but as I expressed to the guys privately, Paul and a few others, I said, no one in their right mind tells somebody feeling fatigue who has cancer, well, the fatigue is as a result of your lack of meaning in life.
Well, they do actually. This is another, I mean, like the conspirituality guys have done a lot of work on this, but it's like, it's a common, I think it does come from American evangelical theology, the kind of like Max Weber, Protestant work ethic type stuff. And it's there in prosperity gospel type stuff. It's there in like,
sure,
and all of that. It's like, if you're sick, it's literally like your fault for not being like positive or like
Sure,
like,
but I don't think that's Paul's perspective. To be fair, I don't think that would be Paul's perspective.
I don't think that exactly matches, but I do think that there's a version of it that isn't as explicit when it relates to like the mental health type things, because it's kind of like, you know, these things are all the entire explanatory framework of like psychology and psychiatry is like rejected, and everything is just recast in terms of like spiritual warfare. And so, you know, if you're like failing in some way, then it's actually due to your kind of like spiritual failing.
Yeah. Let's play a little more just to see if something else comes up, because it's pretty rich. We're not going to play the whole thing, but let's just see where it goes. Oh, go ahead. Did you have something else?
Nope.
Okay.
The difference between, well, not the difference, but understanding God as both agent and arena in the world. The agent, the one who acts, intervenes, reveals himself in the person of Jesus, but arena, the one in whom all this action takes place and in whom we live and move and have our being. And the version of God that I was introduced to as a child and that I had come to, I thought, know and love was an agent in reality, someone who existed within the number of all things that exist. And like ultimately,
Okay. Sorry about that, Phlebas.
That's okay.
The ringer on I used to get a notification bell or something in StreamYard, and suddenly I'm not hearing it. So I'm either losing hearing at that frequency or the feature is turned off. Yes, thank you. Thanks for joining us. Such a
narcissist.
Hey guys. Real quick, Tayo asked, is the argument that a psychology medical framework makes more sense of her story than the version she told?
That's kind of
okay. Is that okay? Is that kind of you're asking the same question, or go ahead?
What does so Paul didn't say much actually in the whole video, but what do you gain by using the label? Like, obviously, I was thinking that too. We've had a number of kids.
Immediately, I'd just say interventions that are evidence-based.
Yeah, but is this like, well, if we have the medical label, then that counters any type of spiritual experience? Like, it just means a different way of interpreting it as say her definition of God expanding through this experience. Like, is it opposed? Like, I have no problem saying it's postpartum depression and God is using it. Like, I don't see.
I don't think it has to be. But I would say for many people, like how to frame this in a way that won't get people's hackles up, right? Because I think for a lot of people, they're just like so scared that they basically reject science is literally what happens. But I think for some people, they just emphasize the wrong thing, or there's like, maybe in a lot of cases, it's just ignorance. I don't think there has to be a conflict between the two. But the problem is, if someone is selling you something and someone else has got medicine that might work slightly better, right? They might not be incentivized to sort of lose their custom, so to speak. So I think there's a lot of incentive structures that exist around particularly holders of like Christian power and social status and influence that prevent them from being incentivized to actually give people a healthy expression and understanding of Christianity that can allow them to seek, mental health support in appropriate ways, because they'd be like undermining a lot of the arguments that they use to get people interested in the first place.
So what's the complaint with this or I guess, Mark, what's the complaint with
Sure.
PVK or the pushback?
No, the pushback is that for me it was an elephant in the room that went just at least unnamed, unaddressed. I can completely understand the idea that this person's going through a spiritual journey, but a large element in the story is just not being spoken of or talked about, or in some way discussed, and it could have it's just missing. It's
Yeah,
you
but
asked, for example, let me real quickly, you asked what benefit would come from naming it. Say if it's just say asking, and if it maybe she did go to a doctor and a doctor did diagnose it, right? Or didn't diagnose it. I'd go either way. But you could at least raise it because it is so common. You mentioned you were going to say, and I think somehow you didn't complete the sentence, but you did say, you mentioned that you've had several children. So did you have something as in terms of a personal anecdote you wanted to share?
No. It's just
Okay.
with every birth, it's like I mean, just with wives in general, there's a lot of hormone stuff, right? So
Yeah.
we name it.
We name it. So we name
to
it.
me, that's not opposed at all to any other interpretation. Like, it doesn't take anything away from her experience. It's like saying, well, when that there's some neutral plane where hormones aren't in play or something like that, and then we're truly perceiving reality. And now it's yeah. Anyways.
Okay. No, I'm just like, say, just take one of the symptoms she described, like the self-loathing. Okay. It might be helpful to just have the frame that says, oh, there's a biological reason why you are feeling this way. And we may have a medication that can help. We may not. We never know with the medications. The meds, at least, I mean, most meds, if prescribed properly, are going to perform better than a placebo. So it's better than a coin flip. But they aren't perfect, and they don't work for everybody, a little or a lot. I mean, some people, they actually can harm for some reason. But typically, a psychiatrist will try to, quote, medicate the problem. It's spoken pejoratively. But I don't know, you get cancer. If, like I was trying to express, like a person with cancer may start to feel some self-loathing because they can't complete tasks they used to find very simple and straightforward, and now all they want to do is sleep. Well, if you didn't know you had cancer, you might just think of yourself as lazy and a bum, or something else. But once you find out you have cancer, once you find out there's a biological cause to the fatigue, well, at least you have some explanation for why you're going through all this. It doesn't change the fact that you are tired, that your concentration is lacking, and so on. But it is something that you can at least wrap your mind around and not hate yourself for. And it also, there is the possibility that if you go to a medical doctor and they have some tools that do work, that can help. You can, it's just, that's the reason, that's why I think it's worth naming and worth exploring as a possibility. But I don't see, again, we don't know, we're flying blind because it just wasn't a subject that was raised. And that's kind of my pushback with PVK, is that we simply don't know whether they spent 5 minutes on it or 15 minutes on it. It would have been helpful to to know, since she's going through this big journey, and towards the end of the rando, she's like, what, she about a month before, 2 months before the interview, she was in ministry. She's had to resign from ministry, but she barely recovered. The baby's like 2 or under 2 years old, and her and her husband are like thinking about, it's like trying to get back in the saddle again and wanting to get back in the ministry, except this time it's going to be more into estuary or something, leading estuaries. And I'm like going, whoa, pump the brakes a little bit. Make sure you're a little bit more well. I mean, there's so many things to address. And I just felt like your health, your well-being for yourself and for your family should be the highest priority. And because she's so acculturated into a kind of sense of evangelical service, like, this is where you know what I'm saying, that she doesn't know how to live.
There was also I think she mentioned going back to her Anglican church, which probably is not like that at all. But true. I don't know. I think
very true.
With missing a lot of the details, kind of what I heard was her very honestly tackling the problem through a spiritual lens. And actually, I thought very healthily, like, she had a lot of maturity, and it's one of those things. It's like, now with the birth, we can say there's an event there, but how disconnected are these two things, these feelings? And she didn't, I don't know. I think if you just chase the medical explanation, you could miss the bigger questions. And to me, she really dove into the bigger questions about what she was feeling. And
so what did you hear? Okay, tell me, what do you think the bigger questions are that she addressed?
Just about, like, I would suspect some of these, she's obviously very intelligent and thoughtful, and had quite a few qualities going for her. And I would have to suspect that some of these feelings were there long before being aggravated by childbirth.
Right.
That would be my guess.
Sure.
And then when it gets so crazy, she kind of, instead of being just like, I'll just, I don't know, get a pill or something and everything will go back to normal soon, she pretty honestly dove into addressing, like, who is God? Does he exist? I don't know. Yeah. Which I thought ultimately, in the bigger frame, is going to be a lot better than retreating to the biomedical explanation.
Are you not contradicting what you were saying before, though, when you said that you don't think their intention? Because
yes, a little bit. I agree. Yeah.
Casting it as retreating would be to say that there is a conflict between them.
Well, I'm trying to maybe give the other side, where you guys are like, get that diagnosis. That's where the truth is.
I think it's not. I don't think that that's what I'm saying so much as, like, imagine you're at church on Sunday, right? And the pastor, father, priest, whatever, in whatever denomination you call them, they've got a broken leg on stage, right? And then instead of being like, oh yeah, let's like whip this person off to hospital, get them in a cast, or get a splint through, you're like, let's theorize about what this suffering means for you spiritually right now, right? You've got like a finite amount of time and energy and effort to deal with this person before you, and your priorities are either see them as a person and help alleviate their suffering. Like, you either care about that, or you care about like some other thing. And I just think that regardless of your commitments to Christianity, that like seeing the person as a human and taking their suffering seriously and trying to alleviate it is prioritized above like any kind of quibble I might have about their theological views or how they understand the problem of evil, or whether they're, you know, their soteriology or something, because like all of that is just you know, a clanging symbol.
I suspect that we're reading too much into it, because if you've had a child recently, like anybody, doctors, midwives, whatever, they're all over this stuff. Like everyone knows about postpartum depression.
That's why
everyone has follow-ups. Like this is pretty standard. So her not address, I didn't have as big of a problem. Paul's role particularly, he was doing a lot of listening. Like so I don't know.
Well, what? Yeah, I would push back against the retreating into a medical diagnosis part, just because we know how bad it can get. Postpartum depression it's already disrupted her career, right off the bat. That's a big problem. But it can be worse, much worse. It can result in neglect and abuse and destruction of the marriage, and then even beyond that. So left now, you know, what percentage of the cases become worst case? What percentage of the cases sort themselves out over time without any help? You know, what's the bell curve of symptoms and durations, and you know, so on and so forth. I think that's why I would say get the diagnosis, get treatment if possible, and do the spiritual work. It's not one or the other in my mind. And in fact, getting some medical help to help a person think more clearly about their circumstances and where they want to go in the future and their responsibilities as a new parent can actually be helpful. If you have a little more, I don't know, when I'm depressed, I struggle to put right now I'm struggling to put one word in front of the other. I mean, it's just, your mind enters a fog. You'd be like swimming in mud when you're depressed. And so it's not just difficult doing things, it's difficult thinking your way through the circumstances you find yourself in. So anything that can help provide clarity is good. Just again, like what would you say to somebody who had cancer, or like Caliban mentioned, a broken bone, or if, you know, any other a heart disease, or, you know, sudden, you know, heart attack, you know, yeah, we know the snake handlers out there who will say, we're going to pray for this person first, you know, get snake bit, don't take him to the doctor, we're going to pray for him, or whatever. But those religions, thankfully, are few and far between. That's not where most of us are at, to my knowledge. It's not Paul Vanderklay's world. He's a very practical man. So, but why in this situation didn't even enter the discussion that what she was going through could possibly be somewhat medically inspired? It wasn't just the result of her upbringing or a result of the childbirth. That is the change in circumstances. It could be actually just a change in biology. I don't feel God anymore because my brain is working differently. Is that?
Yeah.
Go ahead. I hear you.
Yeah. I just took the conversation for what it was. Like, I'm not saying it was a wise thing to do, to put on the internet. I think there's a lot of emotional vampirism that people connect to this raw, whatever it is, and it's a little disturbing. Like, this is maybe a story that should have been told 2 years from now, a little retrospectively, but
Okay.
yeah, I'm not as hung up on. Yeah, I guess maybe you guys are reading into it like this stuff about dinosaurs, that maybe this is such a fundamentalist group that they wouldn't want to talk to a doctor or something like that. But I don't read that into that.
No, I didn't
think
get that
more than
impression either.
I-
Go ahead, Calvin.
Sorry. I'd say, like, I think one thing is the very fact that there's even any kind of a taboo about raising these points, I think shows that there is like a general toxic culture that's opposed to like medical explanation when it comes to like mental health. Like, it's pretty, the fact that it's even like controversial to like bring that up or explore it along, like in a case like this, I think indicates that. And then I think a couple of pieces of evidence, obviously there's only a short clip that was played at the start here, but a couple of pieces of evidence that actually Paul is part of the very kind of framework that's not helping her there, and also how she's making sense of it isn't helping her. I'd offer one piece of evidence would be the fact that she sounds basically like she's on the verge of tears as she's explaining things there to me. That could be overinterpretation, but I think that when people get to a place of recovering from certain kinds of trauma and difficulties, that they've reframed any memories and dealt with them to a degree that it's not re-traumatizing to engage with those things. It sounded like it was still very fresh and traumatizing for her. That could be a number of reasons. But the second thing that I'd say is what I heard from Paul was that he was immediately trying to place her and understand her as a woman, which is, you know, a person who's a producer of babies. And in the way he asked the question, it sounded to me like he was almost making her feel guilty. Like, you should be happy because a woman's role in life is to do this. And that is all a part of this kind of very blind spot driven, patriarchal, particularly evangelical Protestant conception of female gender roles, what women are, that denies and plasters over a whole bunch of their humanity and agency and feelings and things that need to be acknowledged to actually help these people when they're suffering in this way. Again, I think you could very reasonably call what I'm doing there as overinterpretation, but that is how I interpreted what I listened to.
Yeah, I don't know. I have some grace for Paul. Like, he was, this was a blind side for him too.
He actually mentioned that this was there were some back channels that she really wanted to talk about this, and it was a setup through, I mean, a big name in the UK amongst Christians in the UK, was somehow involved in making this connection with Cassidy, and then ultimately putting Paul and Becky together. But I didn't get the impression that he was aware of what he was walking into. He's dealing with it.
I think one of the things that maybe you were picking on that was left unsaid was that Paul was maybe thinking this is very normal, although it's a unique experience to her. Postpartum depression is normal and tumultuous.
I think the way that I'd frame it, if that's in response to the thing I was saying, is more like that I think that the reality of womanhood and motherhood is just far more expansive than the kind of like limited set of concepts that I think people like Paul are kind of trying to place women and mothers in. And so I think that this is one of the ways that some religious, it's the same way that you might look at some Islamic communities in the way that they treat women, where it's like, clearly these people are being kind of coerced and controlled in a particular kind of way and only allowed to express themselves through this very limited function that they serve for a kind of very patriarchal conception of society where they produce babies and work at home. And I think that if women have been brought up with some of those views, right, and then
Does that exist in the UK?
yeah, absolutely. And then if that, but then it, I mean, even for non-Christian women, this is one of like the major causes of a lot of these psychological issues around childbirth, is the fact that their experiences diverge so much from what they're told to expect, right? Because they're told they ought to feel a particular kind of way, and they ought to, you know, there's like a sense of shame and guilt if they experience something different, or if they're, you know.
Well, now I wonder if you're underestimating her and treating her as some fragile woman, because what I heard was somebody who's obviously brilliant and is processing this at a really deep level and honestly dealing with, yeah, okay, so you could get the label, oh, I'm postpartum, but then God is still gone. Like, she's dealing with some big questions, and I don't think we need to. If she pursued this, do we have to acknowledge and whatever because she's fragile? I don't know. I don't see her that way.
It's about, no, I don't see it as a fragile. I don't see it as like that. It's just more like you get the treatment so it doesn't cascade into something much worse. You try to, you know, oftentimes, because I don't know if maybe I'm the only one who's had.
What's the treatment for postpartum?
Depends on the presentation. It could
time, I would say.
Taking SSRIs for time. It depends on exactly what the presentation is, right? Also,
Sure.
there's like talking therapies and things have evidence of improving outcomes.
Yeah, I would just say I would defer to whatever the experts would recommend, but I'm sure they exist. Their measures are taken. Time, certainly, certain.
So what
like
if
you said, talking therapies, or go ahead.
So we don't know.
But we want to back, so we just don't want it to get so bad
Yeah.
that it's even more disruptive to her life than it already has been, right? Okay, you lose one thing to lose a career, it's another thing to lose a family. So we don't want to, see what I'm saying? So that's just a good reason to pursue, even though you still have to deal with the God problem, right? I had God, now I don't have God, in a sense, right? I felt God before the baby, now I feel all alone. I feel isolation. Okay, that's something to be worked through. But it just can still be helpful to at least understand that there could be a biological, medical component to the problem, and life is life. You move forward. We're trying to avoid a complete catastrophe, and that's to me why you could do both. You can walk and chew gum at the same time. You can address the medical issue and address the faith issue simultaneously. But let me ask you guys this: what do you think, Phlebas? Do you think she is moving? Is she in a better faith place? Is she working through her faith? Is it better now? I mean, you think she's in a stronger position now than she was before, in terms of how she described her life before and her life and where she is going now? Or do you think much of that's still unresolved, listening to the interview?
I'm hesitant to use the word stronger because so many of these things so many of these things are inverted in Christianity, but people with high IQs have different journeys. And for her, yeah, I think, to me, it all sounded positive, I guess. The faith journey in particular. But I'm just hesitant to say, like she's going spiritually deeper than some simpleton at her own church. But yeah, I don't know. I heard good things.
Caliban, do you have a thought? Have you listened to any of this, or just only the part I've played?
only the part you've played. I guess one thing I'd say is that often appeals to being intelligent and kind of like special and different are used as a mechanism for people to avoid getting into like evidence-based interventions that would help. But evidence-based interventions are studied on people of all different ranges of intelligence. There's no evidence that, for example, having a high IQ would mean that SSRIs wouldn't work on you, or ADHD medication wouldn't work on you, or talking therapies would be less useful. That's just not borne out in evidence.
Yeah, I was more making the point that her faith journey, her faith journey, and the questions that she is going to have to confront, probably couldn't be answered sufficiently for her at her old church.
That might be right. That might be right.
So, I see it like to me, it was very obviously positive. Like, basically, God is going to use this for her good in the long run.
And honestly, I would say from that she's like possibly still in like the high risk category, right, for like bad things. So it's like pretty serious. and the kind of like theological change has not done anything for that risk profile. So where it's like, what's the priority here? Is it like making sure that like children don't get killed, or is it kind of like having a coherent story of theology?
I suppose.
Yeah,
for
I don't see them disconnected at all.
I guess for me, I'm reading. I was listening to this through my own life's traumas. I've along with my own personal struggles with bipolar disorder, and frustrations with treatment, because I was treatment resistant. I mean, I had to find the just right after, I don't know, did I get to attend different psychiatrists before I finally found the one that worked? Something like that. I went through a lot of doctors to get to the one that worked. But not only dealing with my own issues, my point being that treatment is always a surefire solution. But I've met a lot. I came across a lot of human wreckage over my 62 years, including people who didn't survive, Christians. I mean, leaders in their churches who didn't survive their mental illness. Okay. They died in the pew, more or less, with the disease, untreated. But clearly, in retrospect, were mentally ill, right?
This, I think, though, is the docetism of evangelical or American theology, because in that situation, you say, at least they're in heaven, right? Because you prioritize the spiritualizing narrative over and above the human that you're presented with.
Well, frankly, I don't think the people around, the families and the friends who had to, the survivors of the immediate survivors, none of that enters their minds. I mean, the maybe the pastor, when his elder killed himself, that I know, all right, very publicly shot himself in the chest with one of the many firearms he owned as a collection. Okay, maybe he processed it in those ways because he has to he has to keep the show has to go on, so to speak. So as the leader of the church, he had to probably present this in some sort of emotionally digestible way for the congregation. But for the families and the friends, I don't think that goes to their mind. It's just, I think it's just devastation all around. But life being life, people
I
move
agree.
on.
I agree with what you're saying, but I think the way that I would still relate that to the shortcomings of the kind of totalizing and inadequate theologies that some people offer, because the truth is, when you're hit with like real stuff like that, these frameworks just can't cope with those situations. And I think that that's the same thing as what women face in those like postpartum depression situations, where they're given just an inadequate theology and it can't deal with the reality of the kinds of human experiences that exist in those situations. That's not to say there aren't theologies that
And I've met over the years, met knowing well several women who had severe major issues with depression, mental illness, whatever you want to call it, and some got help, some didn't. And I saw some of it turned into child abuse. I saw some of it turned into progress. Again, these problems have a way of cascading as people get older, and I've seen some get treatment and find a way through. And I've never seen, very rarely do you see the medical treatment work like the TV commercials make them look like. It's not like you're down in the dumps, you take the pill and suddenly it's sunshine and butterflies, on a meadow somewhere. It's usually a slog for people. But the ones who don't survive, I listened to this and said, I don't know, having flashbacks. And maybe I could have, just because of my own history, my own, like I said, the people I've known, I spun left where Phlebas spun right. We see these things through our own lenses. She scared me when she started to talk more about wanting to kind of get into looking for avenues into ministry again. And at the very end of this, that was like, please don't, not yet.
Yeah. I wonder, I think it was just a longing to have a place to talk.
Sure.
But it's like some conversations can be more harmful than helpful. If I reflect on my own journey when I was like a teenager, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I'm adopted and I had like a pretty horrible childhood for a number of reasons. I've got a lot of like trauma and baggage there. Like, talking to Paul van der Klee was one of the most stupid things I could have done as a young man, because he just, promoted all kinds of dumb ideas that should have actually been put down, and gave me like terrible advice about, ideas like convert Joe Rogan to Christianity. What are you on? Like, focus on your job, get a good education, settle down, build up a deposit for a mortgage, like all these things, not focus on just nonsense and like online drama and things. So, I mean, I'm not saying that doesn't mean that that's what happened in this conversation, but I mean, just some people just might not be actually giving good advice because the perspective they're coming from is just a bad perspective.
But what if the only avenue to not feeling a little less alone is to talk to somebody online? And I mean, there's a lot of opportunity to step on landmines when you're doing what Paul does, or what any of us are doing online. On the other hand, not doing it could give somebody just enough human connection to get through another day.
Yeah. There's a weird thing where I think it's tremendously unwise, including this the conversation we're talking about, partially because we're being so speculative about so many things we don't know.
We're talking about what wasn't talked about, right?
Yeah. So, yeah, I think it's unwise. There's also this, maybe it's a generational thing. I don't know how old she is, but there's this weird thing where the digital confessional is more easily accessed by, like, people are open to it. I don't know. They talk more effectively in public in these groups. Yeah, there's definitely, I'm not saying it's wise, but there's a power there.
Well, my parents or your grandparents, Phlebas, I'm sure, would have been horrified at the thought of talking about their lives in this fashion, much less on some place like Facebook Facebook would probably be or on YouTube. I mean, it's like any of it. I mean, my dad didn't live to see Facebook, so he died 30 years ago. But my mom was perplexed by it when she was on it. She didn't get it. She liked the pictures and seeing pictures of family, and so that was most of her interaction was around that, friends and family, looking at pictures. But the rest of it was a mystery to her. But the idea of sharing personal thoughts or personal experiences was, unless they were artists or writers or something, it's pretty alien to them. That generation, anyway.
Yeah, there's some good to it, because it turns out these unique stories there's a lot of commonality and a lot of people connect with it. But I don't know, it's like raw power, especially this one. And you almost feel a little bit like you're peeping in the window or something. It's too much. It's unwise.
Maybe you should do a follow-up in 2 months or 6 months or a year, because you kind of want to know the other half of the story and how they do and how she does. And go ahead, Caliban.
Well, you'll be able to catch her on the Atheist Experience.
All right.
Yeah,
Go
one
ahead.
of those that might get deleted.
You think this will get deleted?
Yeah, I don't really know how much gets deleted, because you never go back and check, but just a few things. She said, like, she hopes her child never watches it. It's like
Right.
that. There's sort of, she wanted the therapy also. Yeah.
But that's kind of like making her feel guilty again. It's kind of like, it's like if I had a kid, right, and it caused me to like wish I'd never had them, I would hope I would raise them to be the kind of adult that was robust enough that they could actually deal with true facts about human psychology, and they didn't have to live in some myth where I was like someone who didn't have the kind of psychological reactions that they had. So I think that is like still a product of her like feeling her guilt about how she should feel as a woman, because she's been told she has to that way. And so she's worrying like, oh, I don't want my child to know the reality of what it's actually like for me.
One last question for you guys. Since you both have a healthcare system that's more similar than, she's UK, Caliban's UK, Phlebas, you're Canada. You both have kind of, what do you call it? Some kind of national health insurance.
Some kind of communism.
Yes, a kind of commie medical care. How confident are you that she got the kind of attention that by her doctors or the pediatrician that, with her baby? What are the chances good that she got the help that she needed, at least somebody to observe and say, to take notes and at least address the possibility that there was some postpartum depression involved with this?
I'd say, yeah. I think the NHS is generally pretty good on childbirth, and with respect to mental health, it's generally pretty bad. But postpartum is quite good. But what's unclear is, for example, if she like arranged to say see a GP to report certain things at certain times, or didn't report certain, like you never know. You don't know the actual content of what's gone on. But I think that those services are able to handle with the demand, that they're pretty good if people can get them. The same can't be said for a lot of mental health services in the UK, though, which, you know, like the waiting list for ADHD is like 4 years in the UK. So.
What do you think, Phlebas?
Yeah, I
Since you've got
suspect.
babies through your system, I mean, so you can actually.
Yeah, we
you have
did.
some-
We did midwife. You can choose in Canada. We did midwives, but had hospital births. So, and there's lots of follow up, and they come to your house. So it can both be very good, but with any of these systems, you need to have some self advocacy in order to get the most out of them, I guess. So, and the other thing from her story was that it sounded like she had a good husband. So at least the very little
There's
tidbits you got, which would
another half
be
of the story worth listening to, right? If it would have been like one of those good couples discussions that Paul sometimes does, would have been interesting to hear his side, you know, of telling the story.
so. Yeah, I would say that wouldn't be a problem. Everyone loves helping mothers. That's like the easiest mental patient to.
Sure, that's usually, yeah. Unfortunately, I can't speak for my own system. It seems to be so all over the map. It's a complete roll of the dice. You're not going to get the same. You can't even guarantee the same quality of care in the same city, much less across the country. So it's very haphazard. But yeah, it's like I said, we're mostly talking about what wasn't talked about, and so
Yeah, I mean, we can talk about what was talked about. I think what I heard. So Brett said she's doing fine. What are we talking about? But I think at one point in that, she confessed to suicidal ideation. Did she not?
Mhm.
Yeah. So
like that in the bit that was played.
Yeah, I didn't get the feeling like she was 100%.
yeah, and you don't have to be, but there was a real thing going on there.
She said in the bit I listened to, it sounded like she was trying not to cry, and that she was expressing like feelings of negative
Crying's
emotion.
okay, Nathan. Let's cry.
It's not that I'm saying it's
Caliban.
It's not that I'm saying it's not okay. It's more like whether a happy person cries or a sad person cries, right? If you're trying to evaluate how a person's doing, I'd say taking crying is like maybe they're not doing the best right now is like good evidence.
Yep. All right, gents.
Yeah, I'm jumping off. Thanks, Mark.
Okay. Thanks, Phlebas.
Thanks, Lewis. Thank you for talking.
Yeah, I wouldn't quite say she's okay yet. I mean, I hope she is. I didn't get the impression that was the situation, but
It's all right though. I'm sure the agentic arena has like got us sorted. So that's what it sounded like. It was all kind of like pessimistic, but then when she went like agentic arena parabolic knowledge, it was like she was just fine from that point onwards.
yeah. I don't know. Yeah, maybe I was just interpreting the whole thing through my own PTSD. I just it couldn't. It left me feeling a bit unnerved.
I don't know. Like I'll say, like I think Phoebus was good to talk to, right, and didn't get angry or anything. But what I would say, like some of the attitudes expressed, like the what, I'm just going to take some pill or whatever, it was like, it was like morally sort of putting down the idea of like medical interventions for any of these things. Even though, on the one hand, he was still saying, "No, I'm fine with that." But then, like, the next sentence would be kind of like, "Oh, let's take some pill, explain it that way," which is, I think there's just a tension there, right, where both things are sort of like believed intermittently. Like, well, there's a desire to be okay with the medical explanation, but there is a fear of it and like a resistance to it as well. And I think that people, like, things that get in the way, like, the Seventh Day Adventist or Jehovah's Witness who refuse a blood transfusion, I think it's no different.
Yeah, that'd be the Jehovah's Witnesses. Seventh-day Adventists are big into medicine. We have we have a major Seventh-day Adventist medical center and children's hospital just
Is
a
there
few
some
miles away
specific
from
thing
here.
they don't like? Is there something, or have I just got that wrong? I could go wrong.
Seventh-day Adventists are pretty, to my knowledge, I don't. They're pretty much cutting edge medicine.
Okay, fair. I was sure. Are they? Is it eating restrictions with them?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, they're vegetarians. Not necessarily vegans, but they are vegetarians, and many are vegans, and strict about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In fact, have you heard about blue zones? That's Loma Linda here is a blue zone. It's
No.
Yeah, where the a high concentration of centenarians, people who are very likely to live over 100 and live well. And it's just a few of those zones in the world. There's one in Japan and one in Loma Linda, and it's interesting.
I think there was a medical thing there though with the Seventh-day Adventists around, like, maybe it was like women with iron consumption or something, because like there's like iron supplements that some of them should take for medical reasons, but it's not on the same level as like the blood transfusion one.
That's possible. I don't know. I know that it's a pretty conservative form of Christianity. It started out of Millerism in the 19th century around a guy who
accurately predicted Jesus transitioning in heaven.
Yeah, then gave a second date, and by the time after it didn't pan out the second time, the whole thing kind of fell apart. But they reorganized themselves under Ellen White, is that her name? And sure I got it right. Yeah. Ellen White. She became their kind of prophetess, and and they meet on Saturdays instead of Sundays. They're kind of their seventh day, right? That's their claim to fame. So,
well, the Muslims got there first, didn't they? With the
didn't the Jews beat everybody there? Yeah.
Yeah. They're Friday, aren't they? Or they?
No.
Friday night dinner. Friday night dinners. Sorry, Saturdays.
Yeah. Sabbath. So.
Oh, that
Tayo's in a mood today.
Watching that Senate hearing made me despise Americans even more. Jesus, the way that man's like Jesus on trial, like Jesus before Pontius Pilate. That was. Can you name?
I didn't watch any of it. I just read about it a little bit.
Oh, they were setting him right up, and they were playing all these like nasty games. For example, like the one that riled me up was, how you perjure yourself if you like say the wrong thing in that situation. They were like asking him questions that would sound like they had an obvious answer to try and get him to like technically be wrong, but they knew if he pled the fifth, which he was doing, then the optics would be like really bad. So like, can you even say the color of the carpet, sir? And it's like, if he said the wrong color, he could have been still done for perjury in that case, right?
Sure.
It was just like a sham trial with these people who had already decided on their conclusion, having a go at this guy. No discussion of the actual evidence. It was yeah, it was very upsetting.
Thankfully we live in a time when it's almost I know they generate the optics for their own purposes and then for regurgitation and
well, that's the
social
thing.
media or something.
He just had to be buffeted around and navigate not behaving in a way in that situation that would lead to like legal harms for himself, right? Which is like,
yeah, he's just trying to what he needs to do is not do anything that places himself in legal jeopardy, and he's fine. And that's basically by not answering questions is the very best move he can make, because you can't commit perjury if you exercise your Fifth Amendment right, and even or be caught in any kind. That's so much of it. It's semantics. It's just catching you in some kind of just enough to where they think they can hang a prosecution on or something. And so it's just and all he has to do is, this is what Comer has proven. Is it Comey? What's the FBI director who was? Comey. They tried to. Now they're trying to prosecute him for his 66, his little seashell thing he made on the beach as a threat, a mortal threat against the president. And all of these prosecutions are falling apart. None of them. I don't think they've successfully prosecuted anybody at this point.
All they do is lawfare, 24/7 lawfare.
Yeah,
I'm joking. Just because that's what Trump used to complain about all the time. So.
Yeah. I don't know. The best thing. I don't know. Right now, it's rope-a-dope. Well, you just kind of let them swing their arms, flail, and then just make sure you're standing when election day comes and move on.
I feel like there's not many people taking any of these people. It does feel to me like it's crumbling and just lost its momentum because people are just worn out. But I mean, I could be like so wrong about that, and there's actually a large portion of people who are still buying into all this stuff.
Oh, there's a percentage, but it is petering out. The thing is I'm not sure. I've never lived through this, so I don't know. I mean, I've lived through things similar.
Nixon,
the Carter years were not great because during that period, the last 2 years of the 70s were pretty rough around here, but nothing like this. Like with the fact that we're not even a year into the Iran war, and we've already lost it. When did America last lose a war that lasted only a year or 6 months or something? But we're clearly losing. Just
depends what you count, right? Because a lot of American wars have been quite weird recently. Like if you consider like Syria or not, or
yeah,
I know. Yeah,
no, Syria. It's this. Were you talking about the Syrian civil war?
Yeah, and also like the ISIS uprising and America's involvement in that. So, like,
sure.
There's been a whole load of like weird insurgencies where it's kind of
but we never. We're not able to supply our carrier, the Abraham Lincoln. There's reports, and there are disputes about the reports, but there are reports coming out about living conditions for sailors on the aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln, and they typically need to, according to NPR, when I listened to yesterday, they typically dock once a month when they're out and about, but because the Gulf is so dangerous and our ability to defend the ports against missile attack or drone attack, that the aircraft carrier has been to sea for something like what is it, close to 300 days or something like that. And this is at 5,000 sailors, and so they're getting no reprieve, and so they're on rations, and just overall living conditions are really rough right now. And I don't know. I've not lived through a situation where our military, we got this ridiculously expensive multi-trillion-dollar military, and I've
Hasn't he
never seen
already?
it fail so spectacularly so quickly. It's
Has
just
he not already increased the debt more than any president previous?
I've lost track. I don't even pay attention to anymore because it's all so ludicrous.
Yeah.
We cut taxes, spend, do whatever, and it's just like I don't know. And who gets the money, who doesn't get the money? There's supposed to be mandatory refunds of the tariffs, right? Because
anyone who pays $10,000 a month for early access to insider trading on True Social, right?
Yeah, there's that too. Yeah, pay big money to see the president's social media posts in advance. It's is Rome burning and Nero fiddling? I don't know. It's just whatever. Like I said, I've just never seen so much failure so spectacularly, and it's just so much of it. And the fact that we can't even fight it. I mean, the one thing America was good at in the last 20 years has been the ability to at least deliver terrific military violence at scale.
All right, sound like Pete Hegseth there. I know what you're saying, though. I agree.
No, I mean, it's just the one thing you could always depend on America being able to do is kill people when they wanted to, or
well, you've
deliver
used all your cruise missiles now, so you're.
We're running out of everything. It's crazy. It's crazy, and you're firing off. I don't know how much. It's some ludicrous amount of money that these Patriot missiles cost, and these defense systems. To knock down, devices that cost 1/10 or less.
You can't even like how maybe like 10 years ago or 5 years ago, even the excuse that the swamp needs draining. There's like all of these elites who hate America are secretly pulling the strings, right? They've been in power so long now, with exactly these points of view, the MAGAs, that those excuses are not literally, they can't be there anymore. They've put every position is exactly who they want to be in place. They've changed every department that they want to. They've done everything they've wanted. It just turns out that they are grossly incompetent. I think that it's not that the Jews are secretly still running the Department of War.
Well, what are we going to? I mean, it's who wants this? I mean, somebody's going to inherit the mess. Because I'm not a betting man, but I assume that there'll be something called the United States still intact when this administration.
It's going to be weird.
Has ended.
It's going to be a weird period if there's Democrats in afterwards.
Well, and just imagine, and of course the people, it's always you always shoot the messenger, right? So the messenger is going to come along and say, here's the bill. You've had a great party for some, you've given these, country has had a terrible party, but at the country's expense, they've given a tiny, tiny, tiny elite minority a very, very extravagant time. But the bill's coming due. And whoever delivers that bill is going to be a very hated person.
But what I mean is there's going to be so many problems hitting America at the same time, because it's not only going to be that wealth disparity, but it's also going to be the recomposition of the economy, the resituating of America relative to all other economies, as everyone in the world is trying to decouple from America. There's so many impacts, and some of them are going to be social as well, the devaluing of the university degree and all these kinds of things, that it's just going to be a really weird place for whoever comes in next, because it's not the changes are so extensive that you're not dealing with the same world anymore. You know what I mean? You're not dealing with that in the 2000s, 2010s, Republican, or even the world that Trump inherited in his first term. arguably even his second one, there's this kind of like range of what we understood as like the modern world that adults live in and the various pathways in life, things like that. It's not going to be that world anymore.
No. Well, yeah. I don't know what world are we going to have. We know we'll have a world. There'll be a world. But what kind of icy rock will we inhabit? I don't know. Or if it's not an ice age, maybe it'll be a super warming, and it'll be water.
I think it's going to be both. In the UK, we get extreme heat in summer, and then because the AMOC has collapsed, we get extreme cold in winter.
Right. Yeah, I know that's the European future, right? Yeah, it's wildfires in summer and icy cold winters.
We're going to become Canada.
Well, how many fires? I saw there are more fires, and it's like from Germany to Spain.
Yeah, there's been a lot of fires in the UK as well. Yeah, though I tell you what, I have been weirdly confident in is actually our reservoir capacity in the UK, despite it being incredibly dry. Like our reservoirs are doing really, really well. Like, you know, there's publicly accessible data you can look at, and it's like 95% capacity for a bunch of them. And it's like, yeah, I'm just saying, I wouldn't have expected that from how dry it is, how long it hasn't rained for, and all the wildfire stuff. And a second thing about some of this is I've been slightly suspicious about the possibility of Russian involvement in starting some of these wildfires as well, because of the conditions being what they are and the locations of them and things like that.
Brett says it's NPR hysteria. Well, it's not just NPR.
What yes. Is the?
Oh, the talk about. I think he's talking about the Abraham Lincoln. They haven't been to port though in this very long time.
Oh, this. Okay. Yeah. What? Even that weren't they the ones who were flushing towels down the toilet as well? Or?
Well, there's family. The thing is the reports are coming from families of sailors.
Yeah.
And so if you want to find out what conditions really are on probably any ship,
you can't trust them. Pete Hegseth is the trustworthy one.
Yeah, and Hegseth, what's his big deal is he wants to boost testosterone levels in the military.
He wants smooth, hard man.
He can't win a war, but he can. The fact is, we're losing the war. I mean, that's the thing. Is that to me is what I find so appalling, is that you started a war and you can't even. America's famous for losing wars in the long term, right? Long run wars of 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Yes, we're not good at the long haul. We're not good at occupying countries for decades. And I think that's actually a virtue, not necessarily a vice. But we've never lost. I got to go back to. I'm trying to think. How far back do I have to go to think of the last time America took it on the chin in the way we've taken it this time around? I'm thinking it's.
I don't know. I'd say like this is pretty different in the sense that you never like smashed the enemy really in the first place. Because you could argue that like Afghanistan is a good example of that. Like Afghanistan is kind of similar to Vietnam in a lot of ways, where that like your enemy there was sort of just able to become invisible and then come back, and you just couldn't really sustain it, and it wasn't economically viable. But I mean, obviously, like, you know, managed to go in there and Iraq before there and win in both cases.
Yeah.
Whereas with Iran, like, you've just not.
We never massed troops. We never. Smith history saying I want boots on the ground. Actually, I prefer no war. I would have liked for us not to done it.
We could have just like not done that. We could just been like.
But once you commit troops of any force, once you're shooting at people, and I mean, yes, some of the precision munitions, they took out leaders and all that sort of thing at the very beginning, and you know, like there's no strategy. Normally, I got to say, with George H.W. Bush, the first Gulf War, he had very clear understanding of the mission, and they took their time preparing for it. They did mass troops, they did put boots on the ground, and they did accomplish the mission very quickly and effectively. The second Bush decided he needed to go and finish the job for some strange reason.
Yeah, you were talking about Desert Storm 1 initially, because I was confused. I was like, you don't talk about Iraq. Yeah.
H.W. Bush, the first Gulf War.
Yeah.
And that was fought, more or less, that was fought with the military that Ronald Reagan had built up over for his 2 terms. And this was kind of America post-Vietnam, post the failures of the 70s. It was its first major military engagement. It was the largest military engagement of the period after Vietnam, and it was well done. If you're going to make war, I was against that war too, believe it or not. I wasn't crazy about it.
But yeah, that was a good war. That was
a hard war not to. I mean, Saddam was making a run for complete domination.
That was like proper blitzkrieg, but done with like cutting edge American technology. Do you know what I mean? Like that was
cutting edge at the time. Yeah. It was very impressive. It turned out people thought it was going to be more of a fight than it turned out to be. Nobody had any idea that America had moved so far ahead, but it wasn't just America either. I mean, you had UK involvement. He had all of Europe was involved in that. He had a true coalition. The second Gulf War and George W. Bush, his coalition was nothing like the first one, and they had mission creep, and it was much more of a mess. But
they still smashed it, though. Like, to be fair, initially
they did.
Like, the initial engagements, the war, it was just they had no ability to deal with civilization building in the aftermath, or
and it's like Saddam was a bad guy. I would just like us not to be bad too. I mean, it would be Abu Ghraib really took the wind out of our sails, I think.
But also, was he really to blame for 9/11? Do you know what I mean? Like,
and he had he had nothing to do with 9/11. That's the thing. Yeah, absolutely nothing.
Very weird, sort of.
That was such a random. I mean, I mean, who knows what vision they had in their minds of why they were doing it, but whatever. No, I'm not for war. I'm just saying, if you're going to start a war, win the war. If you're going to, what's the line? If you're going to strike at the king, you better kill him. Something like that. You don't mess around. And this is just, we're just thinking that we can endlessly fire off smart weapons. Obviously, we can't. There's no endless to it. We can't produce enough to supply ourselves. We don't even have stockpiles of old weaponry to use because we gave a lot of that to the Ukrainians. So we're just in a pickle, and we can't they've not mobilized industry. We've got chip shortages because of AI craze and over enthusiasm. So we've got a chip shortage. We've got the possibility of, China's always over there looming over Taiwan.
Have they tried asking ChatGPT what to do?
Well, they're the ones with all the chips. So it's interesting. Whatever war we're going to have, I don't know. I can't. But whoever, I don't envy the person who gets the job after this. That's all.
They're going to be in a right mess. But I tell you what, though, I don't know. I don't know how the Israel election's looking. But what if Netanyahu gets voted out in October?
Say that one more time. What about Netanyahu?
What if he gets voted out in October? That could happen. Could happen.
Well, doesn't he's doesn't he still face charges?
Oh, from the International Criminal Court. Yeah, I mean, he should technically be arrested by anyone who's enforcing international law. But what I'm saying is they've got their big general election coming up, Israel. So he, it could. I don't know. I don't know what the pollen's looking like over there, but it could be different soon.
Oh, you've got a new member of parliament. I saw.
Yeah, new prime minister and good old Andrew.
No, that's you got a new prime minister.
Oh,
We
you
also
talking
got-
about?
Nigel.
Oh, you talk about Nige from the pub.
Yeah. Makes me want to.
Yeah, but
play a
we've
song.
only got him for another month or two until he has to do a by-election again. So
Oh, is it that short? Is that?
no, because I don't know what you know about this, but so he was being investigated for basically, if you're an MP, you have to declare who your donors are and any money that you take, right? So I mean, and in fairness to him, he has disclosed many sources of his money, and you can look on the Parliament website. It's like it's like gold bullion promotion, and like GB News paying him like 80 grand a showing as well, like pretty serious money from GB News. It's like Trump having a show on Fox or something. But and also this is all in like a lot of that stuff is also in violation of like broadcaster commission standards about like neutrality and all that. But that doesn't matter anyway. Point is, there's a 5 million donation that he took that he was being investigated for by an independent parliamentary committee, that are there to investigate these sorts of things. If he was found to have not declared something that he should have, that information would be put to the public, and there'd be a by-election called. So he could run again, but his constituents would be aware of, like the information about his like misdoings. But what he tried to do to get around that inquiry was he's like, oh, I'm standing down. I'm gonna call a by-election and run again. But now that he's won that, he's still being investigated. So if the investigation concludes that he should have declared it, there'll just be another by-election.
Okay.
And my hope, my hope is that then when it comes time for the general election, probably about a year after that like the people of Clacton will have such fatigue of like all this bullshit. There was only like 47% voter turnout or something in that constituency for the vote the other day. So that's pretty low.
Yeah, wasn't the second runner up was
Binface? He got 27% of the vote.
right. So
Yeah,
it wasn't.
pretty substantive considering. And when you look at the history of that area, you're talking like the most. I don't know what. There's not like a direct American equivalent, but you're talking like the like deep South redneck slave owning state possible or something like.
So on a kind of marginal district.
Yeah, in the sense that their voting history is like, it's like UKIP, Brexit Party, Reform. So
So
it's like
why
always.
tell me this? This is a little different subject, but what happened to Keir Starmer? How did he become so hated in the UK? He delivered, or not even within his own party. I mean, what happened there? Because
I think that policy-wise, there's a number of like different things that happened. I think he lost the British public because he was quite a poor communicator and very uncharismatic. I think that policy-wise, he wasn't actually that bad. Most of his policies are pretty unremarkable, and it's quite hard to sort of like reasonably criticize him on many things. But
the flip, he kind of. I mean, the Conservatives had dominated everything for so long, and he had managed to reassemble the labor coalition into something that could win nationally, and he's at the head of it. And the guy who gets you back into power, you then how long was
I
he
wouldn't
prime
say it was
minister? 2
him.
years? Was he even 2 years here?
Yeah, about 2 years. Yeah. I would say I don't think it's really him that carried it in that way, in the sense that like their strategy was actually called the Ming Vase strategy, right, for the general election that they won. The idea
Okay.
being you just carry it and try not to drop it, right? Because the
Okay.
idea was that just the electorate was so worn out of the Conservatives, and of
Okay.
they'd gone through so many prime ministers at that point and hadn't
Right.
solved any of like what people saw as the major issues,
Okay.
that people were just sick of them and wanted to punish them.
So
And
just all his job was just, or the job of the leadership of the Labor Party was just not to give people a reason to
yeah, exactly.
vote against them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it was a winning. They were going to win by default almost if they
Yeah,
didn't.
and that was kind of it. I don't think that there was like a true alternative there. Where
So
anyone
he's
was
not like the hero of the party. Because I mean, could a Ming Vaz strategy could who was labor leader before, but much more controversial,
Jeremy
notorious
Corbyn, I think.
Corbyn. Could Corbyn have pulled that off? I can't imagine, because he was
think-
always
Well, Corbyn's sort of like an interesting figure in the sense that he's very like misrepresented by the media, but I also think he's not like a great leader. So what I mean by this is that he does have some views which are like maybe a little bit less mainstream or more abrasive to people, particularly like say his stance on Palestine versus Israel, or his stance on like wealth ownership, things like that. But I don't think I wouldn't say he's like explicitly anti-Semitic or anything like that, and he was kind of painted as being that way. But I think the problem with him is more that he was just not very like savvy as a leader. So again, just really ineffectively communicated what his positions are, which allowed basically anyone who was in the media to easily control the narrative about what his views were, because he just couldn't like articulate himself very well. He couldn't understand when the media were kind of like making him say certain things or painting him into a corner. And so I think for those reasons, he probably wasn't a good like leader for the party or executive. But I also think he's been like really maligned by people who have painted him as like this kind of like anti-Semitic communist or something, which is just, I think, really not accurate. He's
not fair.
He's more like this kind of like milk toast, wishy-washy. You might think of him kind of like a Californian or something in an American kind of context. Again, that's like this kind of stereotype Californian of being like a bit like hippy dippy kind of thing. Like,
so what did goodness? How seriously are folks in the UK taking rumblings about Russia trying to take a shot at a NATO country?
Depends who you would talk to about that. I think MI6 are pretty clued in. I think the Army, the Air Force, and the Navy are all pretty clued in. I think that Reform are a party that's affiliated with the Russian regime, so they. I mean, literally, like one of their MPs is currently imprisoned for treachery, for taking money from Russia and collaborating with them.
Who's this?
Nathan Gill, who was an MP, who, was. There were only 6 of them, so at the time, and with some of Farage's dodgy money and dealings and things, I don't know. He's probably a bit more complicated in terms of his connections behind the scene. I don't think he's straightforwardly like connected to Russia or something. He's probably got his strings pulled in a few sort of nefarious.
So you think UKIP is actually a Russian operation?
I don't think it's a Russian operation. I think what it is that the aims of like the Russian strategy towards the UK are served by supporting that party, because all of the kind of grievances that they're using politically fracture social cohesion, undermine institutional power and authority, undermine the ability of the UK to be like a healthy, prosperous place with a flourishing economy, or a populace that's kind of like unified in its understanding of truth or moral values, or what to think about Russia in particular, right? Which all of this and its ability to mount a militarized force to counter Russia, which is a big part of why their approach is what it is.
Well, the Russians are working really hard in Moldova to try to seize control of that government and turn it away from the West. The question is are they going to take a shot at a NATO country? As I mean, they seem really bogged down at this point in Ukraine. They can't get out. They can't leave. They've got the tiger by the ears. They can't let go, and they can't hang on.
They technically have, right? Like there's various cruise missiles that have hit Poland and other places. They just obviously claim that those are accidents.
But an overt attack, and if they'd go against the Poles, that'd be a huge mistake. The question
I think it'd be stupid, but
yeah, because I think the Poles are ready for a fight. I'm not sure if they want. There's no strategic benefit to going after one of the Baltic countries because of the location, but that's the low-hanging fruit on NATO, right? Will the rest of NATO go to bat?
I almost think it doesn't matter though. Even just looking at the economics of a lot of this stuff, there's something to do. There's something to do with the efficiency you get when your economy's been geared in a particular direction a while. So Russia has like a kind of efficiency, right, that isn't necessarily there in a lot of European countries, or you see the same thing in the US, where it's like when strain is put on, when there's demand created for things there's been stockpiles of, all of a sudden it's like, oh, we don't really know how to meet the demand immediately, and there's like a ramping up period. But so Russia's like in that groove of being efficient, but actually it just still can't produce that much. There's all kinds of issues. You know, there's manpower issues, there's a kit and equipment issues. Whereas like countries like Poland, countries like Finland, there's no shortage of manpower or kit right now. Like they are, you know, stocked to the gills of cutting edge. They've been ordering all these Korean tanks in Poland. You know, they've been amassing everything that they can get their hands on. They've still got stockpiles of like Soviet weaponry, and you know, where the Russians have worn out, you know, they've gone through a lot of their stockpiles.
Right.
Stuff.
Right.
The Polish have still got all the front line Soviets, you know, the 80s and 90s, the good kit.
So even if all of NATO, say the western half, say the France, Britain, and the United States didn't come in immediately in defense of one of the Baltics.
I think that Russia on its own,
Poland and Finland alone might be enough to keep them.
I think they almost certainly would. I mean, Ukraine's been doing pretty well on its own, obviously with economic and supply chain support. But I think if Poland are involved or Finland are involved, like that's such a massive change. I don't know that they could cope with that, because they're just so fresh on supplies, morale, equipment. That's just such a wave, and particularly the air power thing as well, because that's been one big thing where Ukraine just haven't really had any planes. Whereas like these countries have got proper air forces, like proper modern air forces.
Sure. And the Swedes as well, right? Yeah. Because both the Swedes and the Finns were their defense strategy was based on neutrality, right? On independence. And then they joined NATO, which was a big boon to NATO.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you know, very much we should be very grateful for their entrance. I'm not sure if the United States understands how important they are, but yeah. So that's interesting. That's true. If they went, if I'd say if the Finns and the Poles were to respond quickly, it almost forced the United States hand to come in and back them at that point.
It depends on what framework you're operating with, though. I think that Hegseth's such a pussy that he'd like back down and betray us and be like, "Oh, it's their problem. We're not getting involved in another European war." Meanwhile, he's like, in Iran, like, "Please, Israel, please, can I spend more money on Israel?" So
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, the Hegseth is a little different with the United States Secretary of Defense versus what you'd see in the UK. Is he doesn't have the kind of independence that he pretty much does whatever.
yeah. But even I don't know exactly Trump's view. Like, I think Trump could do anything. I think Vance definitely. I mean, the views he's expressed when he's been touring Europe have been exactly that. Like, oh, you need to stand on your own 2 feet. Stop being, like you've suckled on our American tit too long or whatever. Like, it's like, oh, come on. He's just kind of like riling people up for no reason, making out that we're the enemy, even though we're meant to be allies. So I don't know that there's actually the sentiment within the current administration to even view Europe as allies. Like, to be quite honest, I mean, didn't Marco Rubio literally put out a statement today saying they don't share intelligence with British agencies anymore? So, like, I mean,
Well, I'm not sure if the Brits trust us.
yeah, I don't think so. But
I think it could actually be working more in reverse, and we're just catching up, which is unfortunate because, I mean, there's a great interview with Stephen Kotkin, who's the famous historian of Stalin and the Soviet era, but he's also really good on geopolitics, and he mentions the American strength. He says the Chinese are a superpower industrially, they're a superpower financially, all these, they're technological superpower now, but the United States is all that, and it traditionally was an alliance superpower and there's another one, but an immigration, what he called an immigration superpower.
Right. Okay.
That is, and so we've kind of really weakened ourselves because we're messing with the alliance. That was our secret sauce. Was we had this tremendous.
America was like the dominant cultural force in the world. Everyone viewed it as kind of their friend, even if they had issues and things. And whereas now, I feel like most people are just like, go away. Like,
well, it's we don't know. I mean, it's that I think we the statistics on immigration are, and lawful immigration, I know they are all again about the illegal immigration, but the lawful immigration, it's first time in forever that we're seeing less of it, and a lot of people just don't want to stay. The guy who was my son's doctoral advisor for his PhD was a UK. He's a real authentic genius, and was in charge of huge budgets for nuclear particle. I'm losing my mind. Anyways, he was in particle physics. He was doing research in particle physics. Big name, and he looked around, and they cut the funding for his research, and he took that, and then taking it all in together, he packed up his family and got a job back home at a university in the UK.
Yeah, and also, I mean, there's been historic high applications for visas from the US to the UK over the past couple of years. I think there is a big like brain drain effect, and that's another one of those things. When you talk about the competitive advantage that the US has had economically, I think that your sort of like smartest, most productive people wanting to be elsewhere is probably like a good indicator of like something bad happening.
What do you think of the I've heard some rather hysterical things said by conservatives in the UK about the state of your national defense. How do the the local man or woman on the street feel about the state of?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know how the average person feels about it, because I feel like defense is something where, because the UK has just not been at war for so long, and it's very like complicated. It just feels. It feels like for a lot of people, it's just not something that they really think about or consider. I think for
Are
people
they not
who are
too
like,
worried? There's not.
well, it depends who you talk to, because I think for like the alt-right parties like Reform and Restore, they are definitely pushing the Russian propaganda that comes out of the Mark Felton podcast, of like, you know, the Navy with more admirals and ships and all this kind of stuff, and you know, can't defend itself for anything. And I think that a lot of this stuff is very hyperbolic. There are definitely issues, but on paper, I mean, we're like, who are we military peers with? Russia, right? Like, literally, that's who we're peers with. They've got a larger army than us in terms of manpower, absolutely. But in terms of Air Force and Navy, and then also force composition that we've got in the army, and also just like supply chains, kit, and spend, we're peer to peer with Russia. So it's like, you know, I don't think that's bad considering we're a little island, but you know, we're not we're also not pre World War II or World War One. You know, we're not the British Empire. We're not this, and I don't think we should be thinking of. I think it's wrong for us to think of ourselves as being that, or that being our place in the world. Our defense concerns are like very specific. There are issues. There are things where money can be spent in smarter ways, but I think we're doing a pretty good job and punching well above our weight for like our size, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Well,
even like, look at
go ahead.
the Strait of Hormuz, right? I mean,
Mhm.
who's it that Trump wants to go and send the minesweepers in, because the U.S. Navy, the biggest navy in the world, doesn't have the capability. What? It's the Royal Navy, right? That's one of the things. So
Okay.
we've got a lot of stuff that we bring to the table.
Don't get me started. I am still baffled. I can't. I don't understand this war. I don't. Our behavior, our conduct, I don't get any of it. I don't. I'm at
Well,
a
we've
loss.
cleared the mind for you now. Trump's claimed that
Oh,
is his
I don't know what we're doing. I don't. It's just the fact that we're worried about the Houthis on the other side taking pot shots at shipping. I mean, come on, guys. Yeah.
Maybe that
can't-
Barack Hussein Obama guy could sort it out. I don't know.
I am without words. I am without words. I am speechless. I am without speech. This war. So you can't. There's nothing to even talk about, because I can't fathom. I can't defend it. I can't make sense of it. I don't know where all of the money's gone. You know, the weapon systems that should have been there that aren't.
What's the plan? What's going to happen?
What's the objective? How are we going to? I mean, yeah. I mean, it's.
What's the state of it like legally with Congress? What have they actually said they should or shouldn't be doing?
They've every attempt to. It's been. I mean, they've rubber stamped the decision and funded it, because you got troops in theater.
Yeah.
So it's the way we've created the system that we have after World War II is that the president goes to war and Congress funds it. And if you don't fund it, then you look like you're starving our soldiers and sailors of necessary resources, which makes you loathed by the family who votes at home. And it's a really stupid system. unconstitutional, but it's the system we've got.
Hmm.
I don't know. It doesn't sound like the. I mean, it all depends on what media you listen to, but they make the UK sound like it's on its last leg. Sometimes you listen to what was Peter Hitchens. Peter Hitchens. That's
Well,
his name.
he's always had issues. So Peter Hitchens is
He's a hyper grump.
he's a meme. Yeah, like he's been complaining for about 20 years about British summertime, like as if it's the end of the world. Like honestly, every single year when the clocks go forward or backwards, there is a piece put out in the Daily Mail by Peter Hitchens about how this is like literally like the downfall of like humanity and the worst thing that anyone's ever suffered. He's just
Okay.
he's just a drama queen.
Okay. Yeah. But there's a lot of. I mean, I listen to a lot of. For some reason, maybe it's because of the algorithm. My involvement with the corner is the algorithm always leans right, coming out
Yeah.
of Britain, unless
So
I
it's very
intentionally go
weird.
over to Radio 4 or something, and I get alternative visions.
The narratives I see are also like just incredibly weird. I think particularly living in London, because so much of it focuses on London. It's like it's just so untrue, like just insanely untrue. I don't even know how to put it. Like particularly the stuff about like Islam, Muslim no-go zones, like it's just so false. I have no words for how because like people will say things and then you can literally go to the place where there was some like tweet where people were saying there's like Islamic shops or like Muslims on horseback like chasing people down or something, and you're like, this is just some like street in a like one of the richest poshest neighborhoods in the world, and there's like people shopping, and it's just not accurate. I don't know.
Yeah, it's this is. Let me show you. This is my. I do consume a lot of British content, but one of my favorites is this guy, Gary Eats. I'll never eat at any of the places he reviews, but he's a hoot to watch and listen to. He's got, what is it, over 500,000 subscriptions.
Yeah, looking pretty big.
But it's but you guys look like you're doing fine. I mean,
like there's problems, but I think we're overall doing pretty well. I think we just reported. I think we've actually been doing better than a lot of other G7 countries in terms of GDP growth. Like I said, I think there are definitely criticisms in the military, but we've got one of the strongest militaries in the world, and I say punching well above our weight for our size. There's there's like challenge. I think the biggest challenges we face right now are in how we respond and adapt to climate change is one of those, and rebuilding public trust in like institutions and informing the public. I think those are like really important for fixing and protecting democracy here. But in general, I think we're like pretty good country.
Did Brexit net hurt, or is it or a net help?
I think it depends on how you look at it, but I would say that Brexit's responsible for both a rise in illegal immigration into the country and a loss of a lot of money in the economy. So I think both of those have been bad things.
Well, I think it seems to me like the UK, I think one of the things that people hoped for with Brexit, the advocates of it, would that Britain would draw closer to the UK would draw closer to the United States, and it turned out that that's just not happened.
Yeah, but
So
I
it's like you're caught between a rock and a hard place, and you've got to pick if you're going to go. The UK needs an alliance, and it's got to be either with the continent or with North America, it seems.
The thing is, I also don't think people really wanted it's not clear what it is that people want when they say that sort of thing, right? So like they might have that idea in general, but like when it comes to say like one big thing is like food quality standards, right? Where there's just massive differences in the legislation around like the quality of life for like livestock, or how food is like prepared, or what goes into food between the US and the UK, which makes like a huge difference in things like eggs or meat quality and things like that. And just like people in the UK just aren't willing to accept things that are taken as standard in the US, but part and parcel of drawing closer to the UK would be removing some of that legislation that gives people the meat and eggs that are the way that they like them and know them and things like that. So I just don't think people really actually do want a lot of the stuff that they say they want when they say those sorts of things. When it comes to kind of like getting them.
But your values in that sense are much more in line with the EU than it is with the United States.
I don't know as well, because we've got a complicated relationship with Europe where, you know, we're like very racist against basically every, and I mean this in like, I don't mean this in like even a condemnation sense. Like, you know, I hate the French, but you know, I love the French, but I hate the French in the sense that it's part of my British identity to be perpetually mocking the French, at war with them, you know, making jokes about Agincourt, things like that. And so Europe's kind of like, it is a separate thing, I feel, to Britain. And we do feel we have like a different role in the continent than other European, you know, like even with the EU, and I support us being in the EU, it feels like we don't have the same role in that as any of the, you know, like we're still kind of like an outsider, but we should be in it for the benefits, the mutual benefits that all the parties can have. But it does feel like we're an outsider to it. And you know, we're one of the only countries that maintained a sovereign currency,
right,
and some special like voting and legal rights that other countries in the EU didn't retain.
It's late where you are. Do you? I always have more questions, but
I'm
feel
all
free
right.
to just bow out. I got a couple more minutes. All the things that people worry about, like, okay, say Peter Zeihan is one of those who talks a lot about demographics as destiny, and the depopulation and the upside down nature of our industrialized countries. Europe worse than the United States. United States not in a good place, but in terms of aging populations and so on. Is this anything that folks in the UK are worried about on average, or is it just not on anybody's radar and it's only for a handful of people on the YouTubes?
No, I think it is, because I think that particularly for the vast majority of the young working population, you know, I'm not talking about all these benefit scroungers, the old people who just consume from the state and live in their 5-bedroom houses, all the boomers. But the young people who are working, I think the landscape that they live in is this very white collar service based economy, which is very shaped by certain technological changes in like software, but it's also very shaped by the way that like broader geopolitical changes can constrain or change demand for the kinds of like services and knowledge work that exist. And I do think that the industrializing in the UK has been like a massive problem. And in fact, like for example, the government recently had to buy one of our only steel manufacturing facilities that was being sold off because we couldn't guarantee military grade steel for our military supply chains anymore. And there's all sorts of like examples of these things where in the past Britain has had incredible manufacturing capabilities, and we kind of like lost it because essentially we decided that there were greater margins to be found in removing certain parts of businesses and industry to other places where even if they did it slightly worse, it could be done cheaper and for a greater margin. And then, kind of changing the UK to be this kind of like command and control center for all this stuff of like people working on spreadsheets and navigating logistics and selling financial products and doing marketing and knowledge work and stuff like that. And I think it's been weird. It's made the economy less healthy. It's even with respect to climate change, it's quite weird because we still have the same demand for goods, but when those goods are produced overseas, they're often produced in ways that cause worse emissions than if the same goods were produced in the UK or the EU, because there's like differences in the manufacturing techniques or even the legislation that exists around it and things. And so we can kind of like tell ourselves, well, we've reduced our CO2 production, but we haven't, because we still demand the same goods. They're just manufactured, using like 10 tons of coal in China or something instead of like using like wind power in a place in the UK. So I think we should be reindustrializing in various ways and kind of composing the makeup of our economy. But I think that there's an overly simplistic view of some of that stuff, which is like the JD Vance angle on it, which is this kind of nostalgic myth of a better time in the past when men were men and they went down the mines and got cancer.
Well, and that's there's so much hypocrisy with all that. It's just it's mostly posing, for it's promoting a mythology that they themselves don't live out. I mean, their wives, he's married to a lawyer.
Right.
She's not stay at home, baking him dinner every night or whatever. I mean, it's the whole, so much of that is just LARPing or whatever they call it for the cameras and for to promote an image for gullible voters. But
that's probably right.
But I do wonder, it's like, is like the UK affordable place to live for someone in their 20s and 30s, or is it really, really hard? Like I hear so many
it's definitely
young adults here.
It's not. It depends on what you want out of life, though, right? So, like, there's ways of looking at it where America is better because you're better paid and property's cheaper, right? But the question is working in American corporate culture and owning a property a better quality of life than not owning property and working in UK corporate culture? And I think that a lot of people would rather live like in London and in that culture and would be more miserable owning property in the US but having more money. But that's not for everyone. I mean, like, people have different psychologies and enjoy or prefer.
Well, I mean, even just affordable where you can live. Do you live in a way that you feel like you can build? Well, how do you imagine? Do you think about things like retirement yet? Or is that not a concern for people since you have a different kind of safety net?
It's different for me because I'm a very high earner. So I've pulled myself up by my bootstraps and made my smart choices. And I am speaking from for example, I can kind of say I don't think that the state pension will be worth anything for my generation, but also like I don't care about it because I've made sure that I will have a private pension that's like fine for me. But I know that for a lot of people, like, that is actually pretty catastrophic. And like my parents, for example, I mean, they didn't really have any provision in terms of like private pension or anything. They weren't smart with their finances. But what they did manage to do is ride a wave of property prices increasing so significantly that that's kind of ticked them over, in the sense that I think they bought a flat when they were in their 20s for about 25 grand in Putney in London. And then they bought a house up in the north for about 50 grand in the 90s. And then they sold it just before they got divorced about 5 or so years ago for like 650K, right?
Oh my God.
And so so that is how all of the
Yeah.
wealth that they have and how they're able to survive in retirement is that. But that is like, and they've got their state pension, of course, as well, which is, I don't know, about like a grand a month or something, and no mortgage and outgoings and things. And so like they're all right. I don't think it will be like that for people in my generation. People who live like they did and are not putting away consistently 10% of their salary into like stocks and shares, ISA or whatever, where they can have it embedded away to retire on and get compound interest on over 50 years. They are just screwed. They will have to work forever or starve, or there'll be a political solution. You know, like it's the current infrastructure just can't deal with that. There's not enough working people to pay out the pensions. There's rules that are in place. There's a rule called like the triple lock, where there's like 3 different measures of inflation, and it's whichever one is the highest of those is the rate that the state pension grows at, which is just unsustainable as well. Like it means that basically the payout from pensions has like massively outstripped wage growth over the years. So there's all sorts of like social problems that are brewing under the surface, but it's not clear what the solution is to any of them.
Yeah. Well, in some ways it sounds familiar, and in other ways it's different. And
but this is what I'm saying. We get if we just got past all the kind of like nonsense in our politics, right, and we could build a kind of British identity to be passionate about that was appropriate for modernity, you know, we could just get everyone involved, chipping in these massive projects of, you know, people wanting to build businesses and startups and build homes and, you know, get involved in teaching and stuff. Like the problem is if your story that you're telling is so bogged down in like, oh, but they're a Muslim and what does Christianity mean, and like just dumb disagreements like that, you're not going anywhere and you're not solving any real problems for anyone. But if you can actually like get everyone banded together under the good old Union Jack and feeling proud about what they're doing and what, you know, I feel like there's a sense of unity and cohesion and productivity that people can kind of get. But I see that when I watch the opening ceremony of the 2012 Olympics, right, where I see this expression of Britishness that is appealing to all sorts of people from different kind of like religions, social strata, backgrounds and places in society. And I very much want us to get back to that and away from this weird thing that's going on at the moment.
Yeah. No, same over here.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel hopeless,
Yeah.
but it is certainly confusing, and we seem like we are just wasting
time,
a whole generation's worth of resources on complete nonsense and graft, and it's we're bleeding ourselves dry very quickly.
It's such a goddamn waste as well. This is what upsets me too when I see, you know, like when I think of like the best of this is what upsets me about the American situation, is that at its best, America has so much to offer, and all of that, there is not. I don't think there's a problem in the world that humanity faces that at its best America couldn't actually solve at the minute, right? But all of that is being squandered for just no reason, for literally no reason at all. And it's like, why? Why? Just why?
Yeah. No, it's inexplicable.
Yeah.
My dogs need to go out, I guess. I hear them barking. Yeah. So have a good night, good morning, wherever you are. Yeah. And thanks for hanging out with me, Caliban.
Yeah, all good. Have a good weekend. Thanks.
All right, bye.